Well, there was one other area I was hoping to talk to you about, unless there was something else that you wanted to bring up. But for me, I'm curious about what's happening in this sort of this observability space, right? Splunk has been kind of the undisputed king for so long, but maybe having a little trouble with their cloud transition. Now Cisco goes ahead and gobbles them up. We have other players out in the space like Datadog, Elastic, which has a freemium offering. Dynatrace plays around with it, more application monitoring than a pure SIM, but I'll throw them in there just for fun. New Relic is another name that does really good on observability, probably more on the cloud analytics side, maybe more than security, but they certainly play in there too. I am just curious, like, what do we think's happening in this security SIM space? The XDR players we were just talking about, the endpoint players, with XDR, they bring that telemetry in. There's so many other ways to kind of hold this logs that I'm just wondering how long do we need the SIM for going forward?
I think what you're seeing is people got tired of paying for Splunk and the ingestion, the ingestion costs and whatnot. The surprise costs at a certain point have just moved to other players. That was something that we did our own journey. I've been part of other organizations that have went through similar journeys, and if you go from having to constantly be vigilant over what you're feeding it to somebody like Elastic, where it just doesn't matter as much, it's a brave new world.
Yeah.
And with Datadog in particular, if you're feeding all of your tasty IIS, your application logs, and everything else into it. Oh, and by the way, they built in signals that are very SIM-like, and you just have to check a little box, and all of a sudden now you have stuff that looks like a SIM, talks like a SIM, kind of squawks like a SIM, but it's not a full-blown quote-unquote SIM yet. It's very easy just to stay in Datadog and kind of just avoid having to ship everything to Splunk. I really, really like Datadog and Elastic these days.
Yeah, I think they're well positioned and they're great technology. And between the two of them, we're actually seeing Datadog come down a little bit and Elastic go up a little bit, although, apples to apples and overall spending levels. And I think that's because Elastic does allow people to have a freemium entry. You can run some stuff through before actually wrapping all the enterprise layers on it.
Yeah, Datadog does it. I don't want to be very punny, but they do have a little bit of a bite as far as their pricing goes.
Yes.
A little bit. You have to be that ingestion kind of worry that you left with Splunk. You go to Datadog, and now you're kind of hyper vigilant into kind of what you're doing. I'll give you a really quick example why. I know of an organization that was implementing Datadog, and they were doing synthetic tests, and they weren't quite paying attention to how frequently they were running those synthetic tests. We're like, yeah, it's great. Let's turn on all these synthetic tests to happen as quickly as Datadog can do it from all these different locations. And that's a $2,000 or $3,000 a day kind of hit. And it was like,
Surprise
whoa, we got to turn this off.
Yeah, surprise bill.
Datadog will, right.
And particularly now when we're in a world right now where those budgets are being adhered to. It wasn't like back in the day where like, oh, we made a little mistake. We spent more than we thought. There's a lot of fiscal audits happening right now, and it's a bad time to have a surprise ingestion bill.
Yeah, those CFOs are definitely paying attention these days.
Yes, they are. So yeah, interesting space. Curious if you don't mind, maybe just as we sign off here. I mean, everyone at some point had to use Splunk, and largely it was for compliance reasons because you had to keep those logs. Do you think that from a compliance and a regulatory standpoint, that logs being held in something that's not a true SIM will be good enough for cyber insurance reasons, for regulators, or does Splunk still just hang on for that reason alone?
I think Splunk has a ton of legacy business that will be hard to unseat them from, kind of like what Broadcom has done with VMware.
Sure.
That's kind of maybe Cisco's play. I think for people who can escape, they've escaped or they're planning their escape. There's not too many of us that look at Splunk and get excited these days of, oh, yeah, let's go drop $1 million and with that vendor. It's more like, how can we save that $500,000 and spend it elsewhere? And what do we get? I think the move away from these best of breed vendors in particular into something that's a good enough platform play especially as budgets and stuff are kind of we're really being held to those right now. Especially, I know for sure I am. So
Right.
as we look for transitioning away from Palo Altos or the Ciscos of the world and the peoples that have more platform, what can I get for my spend? It starts to make more sense.